Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have an upload that may possibly blow your mind. Before we get into it, a couple links. As you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, and my merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. The links to Patreon and PayPal are in the description below. My merch is displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, the links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe, click the like button, and please leave a comment. It really does help, and guys, it definitely matters. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's get on with today's upload, shall we? So I have been sitting on a video for 2 years now. I shared it once, and it's a 40-second video of a dogman that drops out of a tree and runs at high speed across the field. A subscriber in New York, in the Catskills region, caught this and sent it to me, shared it with me. Last night, I was checking it out again, and I decided to zoom in on the creature, and I slowed the speed of the video down to 1/4 its speed. So the initial part will be the original, then zoomed, then slowed. And you can see this creature just hauling across this field. It is no deer. It's running bipedally. At first, it hits the ground and runs a couple gallops, quadruped, and then it stands up and goes. It just, gone. But before I share that with you guys, I'm going to share a couple of encounters, then the video, then a couple more encounters. Let's get into it. Because I'm from upstate New York, the video that I'm going to share today is from New York. Let's start the upload with an encounter from upstate New York. Today's first encounter. On the Sunday of Memorial Day weekend 2017, I believe it was May 28th, I was hiking alone on the Terrell Pond Trail near Blue Mountain Lake, Hamilton County, in the Adirondack Park in upstate New York. I was about 1.5 to 2 miles down the trail when I got to the edge of a clear cut. The state had an easement for the trail through private land, and the owner had been conducting logging operations for a few weeks. One second, you're hiking in a forest, and the next, you're standing at the edge of a vast area that looks like it had been heavily bombed. As I stood there taking a drink from my hydration pack, a large, grayish, silver Sasquatch broke cover from a clump of small trees, brush, and debris on a small rise. It was at my 1 o'clock position, approximately 80 yards away. I saw it take 3 to 4 strides before it was back behind cover. I was in stunned disbelief. I immediately tried to rationalize what I had just seen. A few seconds later, it then broke cover again, this time at my 2 o'clock position, a little further up the slope. It took 5 or 6 strides before it was behind another mass of debris. I waited a few minutes to see if it would continue up the mountain, but there was no sign of it. I worked up the courage to walk down the trail to look around the other side of that rise that I was walking on. I didn't see any movement or hear anything. I kept thinking that if it's walking through that debris, it's going to be making noise. There's just no way to take a step without landing on a branch and snapping it. I quickly decided the reason that I didn't hear or see it was because it was hiding and watching me. This thought made me very uncomfortable, and I quickly returned to the edge of the clear cut. I contemplated continuing the hike, or about 10 seconds, and then decided that since I was alone and without any protection that I was going to head back. I never felt threatened, but I was pretty shaken up. I was about a quarter of a mile back down the trail when I heard a wood knock. It was about 5 or 6 knocks in quick succession. That came from behind me at around my 7 o'clock position. I told myself that it was a woodpecker, but part of me thought that it was too slow of a cadence to be one of them. I started checking behind me after that and stopping abruptly to see if I could hear any movement. I continued on the trail for about another half a mile or so. I heard the same knocking succession, but this time it was closer and now almost to my 9 o'clock position. I just kept walking and telling myself that it was a woodpecker, and it may very well have been. The rest of the hike out was uneventful. It was hard for me to judge its height. I'd have to say 6.5 to 7.5 feet. Its width was what impressed me. It was easily 2 times as wide, if not more, than the average person. It was powerfully built, silver and gray in color, with the exception of the tannish brown color around parts of its face and on the side of its head, where I presume, since I was too far away to see them, the ears would be. It walked slightly hunched forward, its arms swung close to its knees, its head was low on its broad shoulders. It moved very quickly, while showing no effort in doing so. What I saw bore a striking resemblance to the creature in the Patterson-Gimlin film. I started hiking 6 years ago, and I've been on almost 90 hikes, mostly in the Adirondacks and a few times in the Catskills and Vermont. Hardly a day goes by that I don't think about that encounter. I usually post about my hikes, and I would sometimes joke, no sign of Bigfoot today, but I don't joke about that anymore. Today's second encounter. It was the summer of 1973. My dad had just graduated from high school, Waterford Township High. He and a bunch of his friends had gone up north a ways outside of Traverse City, Michigan. His friend Susie's family had a cabin up north on a lake. There was a group of about a dozen 17 to 19-year-olds all hanging out, drinking beers, and celebrating the summer. A group of them were having a bonfire out on the beach when Susie got up to go to the bathroom. My dad's friend Mike offers to walk her there. And as they are walking the 50 feet from the beach bonfire to the cabin, Susie notices a dark shadow much further up the road near the tree line. She points it out to Mike, and he looks and then says they should hurry up because he thinks it may be a bear. Mike pauses for a moment as this creature continues to lope closer toward the cabin, but not in a way that indicated its destination was the cabin. He notices that it isn't nearly big enough to be a bear, and thinks it may be a wolf of some kind. Susie comments that it doesn't look furry enough, and maybe it has mange or is rabid. As they are walking closer to the cabin, the creature meets a break in the tree line and becomes considerably more visible in the moonlight. That's when Mike calls my dad and another guy over, and they see what appears to be a very hairy, naked man loping down the gravel road on all fours and at a pretty decent clip. They send Susie back to the bonfire to be with the rest of the group, and they decide to chase it. Yeah, drunk teenage boys. They start booking towards this creature. When it sees them heading for it, the creature starts booking back up the road and across the clearing. Now my dad ran track and was the best shape of his life, albeit drunk, and he couldn't catch the damn thing as it barreled down that gravel road on all fours. It reached the tree line and leapt up, cleared a 10 to 15 feet into a tree. At this point, a bunch of the beach kids ran over to where all the kids were. There all saw this weird creature, as my dad describes it, sitting in the middle of this spruce tree, and somehow it managed to jump up and climb while butt naked. They tossed some beer cans and rocks at the thing and kind of just aggravate it for a few moments in the dark. When suddenly it emits this horrifying sound, my dad said it was the most blood-curdling noise he had ever heard. It sounded halfway between the bark of a dog and a bleat of a sheep. It was loud, and after it made that noise, it started shaking and sort of jumping in the tree. Then it jumps out and books it into the woods. My dad still swears to me that this was true, and Mike had confirmed at least pieces of the experience that he remembers. As adults, my dad and I had discussed our theories, and I had just assumed it was a burnt out hippie that had taken way too much acid. I'd also like to stress that we had never heard about Dogman, and we kind of always called it the Ape Man. Alright guys, here is that video that is out of Catskill, New York. Once again, the guy was just taking videos, relaxing, chilling out. He heard some ruckus in a tree nearby, turned with his camera, and took this video. The video obviously is not as long as this. I've blown it up, slowed it down, but the initial part of the video, the first 40 seconds, are the original video that he sent me. So it's pretty compelling. I know, of course, there will be people out there that'll say it was a deer, but I've broken it down and I've looked at it on my computer, and it's definitely not a deer. So here it is, my friends. So the first time that I shared that video was about 2 years ago. I only shared the 40-second clip. I hadn't enlarged it. I didn't slow it down any. And today I was just kind of relaxing in the studio and looking at pictures, looking at videos, and I decided to zoom in on it. I didn't have any intent on sharing it again, but once I zoomed in again and slowed it down, I was like, yeah, I need to share this again. And the last 2 minutes of that clip is at 1/4 the speed of the original video. And you can clearly see that creature it's not a deer, it's not a bird. I had people saying it's a bird, it's a deer. I don't know how someone would say it was a bird, but you can see that thing loping, hunched over. It hits on all fours, bam, up on two, and then it's loping, hunched over, and running incredibly fast. So that is the video that, wow, I'm watching it again as I'm recording this. That's the video that someone shared with me 2 years ago, and I'm just glad that I decided today to enlarge it and slow it down a little. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. On to today's third encounter. I was hiking along the Ausable River in Michigan during the summer of 1999. This is in the counties of Osceola, Alacana, and Losco. I remember one of my most scariest encounters with the wilderness. While walking east down along the river, around an hour prior to dusk, I heard what to my ears sounded to be a wolf's howl. I had seen wolf prints, and I've seen wolves at my home in Long Lake, Michigan, but never have I heard a howl so deep and almost human-like in my life. I was spooked and set up camp and made a fire larger than most due to my fear. At dusk, I heard the howling, and it was getting closer, directly across the river. I had heard stories of the wolf man from native powwows and in my family's folklore covering the whole United States, but never had I personally seen what I saw that night or the next day. That night, after eating some beef and barley stew from the canned good collection, I lied down by the fire with my huge folding knife closely gripped to my chest. I was watching and listening to the surrounding woodline for maybe 30 minutes when the average night noise stopped. To me, it meant two things. Either something had spooked the local animals, and that made me very uneasy. I looked out away from the fire and shot the fire away from my eyes using the unarmed hand. I looked across the river, which was only about 100 meters from my fire. That is when I saw the most unnerving sight ever. On the sand was a creature standing, maybe larger than the average sow black bear, with black fur, long, large skull, and yellow reflecting eyes like a wolf. I closed my eyes, hoping I had imagined it, and then it gave out a howl again. I opened my eyes and it ran up the bank and disappeared into the night. As it ran, it did not run on all fours, like a bear nor a wolf. Unlike the local Bigfoot, it wasn't fully upright like a human or primate. I was terrified and I slept the rest of the night in a tree about 20 feet off the ground. It took me 3 hours and praying to ease my fear, so I finally could sleep. Tonight's final encounter. I'm a 70-year-old retired nurse and a 27-year veteran of the United States Navy and Army. I grew up in Oregon and frequently went hunting and fishing with my dad. Every year since I could hold a fishing pole or legally hunt with him, I guess you may say that I knew most of the animals that are normally found in the area near where I lived and hunted during these expeditions into the wild. I had never seen, heard, or smelled anything that may be evidence of a Sasquatch or any other cryptid that lived in the area where we hunted. I've also been skeptical of such creatures existing even after the Patterson film was released. While I was on active duty, I came home on leave for hunting season, which occurs around my dad's and my birthday. The last hunting season that I went with my dad before he could no longer hunt was near the area where my encounter would occur. We had seen bear, big cat, elk, deer in that area. I have 3 cats, and I've always kept 3 since I left active duty. My cats would age and pass on and bury them in the same area where all of our pets had been buried over the years. Since there are bear in the area of our little pet cemetery, I carry a sidearm when I'm up there. I also remain alert to the sounds around me. One of my cats passed away the day before the encounter, June 18th. On that afternoon of the 19th, I took him up to the little pet cemetery below Harness Mountain, which is located in Douglas County, Oregon. I was digging a small grave and was nearly done when I heard what I thought was a bear moving through the brush on a small hill above the pond. The breeze shifted, and I got a whiff of some strong, musky odor. I thought that it was a bear either stalking me or passing close by. I drew my pistol and chambered around, and what happened next caught me totally by surprise. There was a loud growl, and something started stomping through the trees, snapping branches, making a stomping sound like howled drum beats. I finished digging the grave while this creature circled me, stomping and growling, and when it was opposite of me and across the pond, it picked up a large rock about the size of a medium watermelon and threw it across the pond toward me. It landed a short distance from the bank and splashed the water down where I was digging. Well, this was disconcerting, so I finished the burial without any ceremony and stacked some rocks on the grave that I had hauled up with me to protect it. Then I got ready to leave and hiked to my truck. I loaded my tools in the back of the pickup. Getting ready to drive off, I heard another loud growl from behind me. I got in and pulled out onto the main road and started driving. As I passed through that clump of brush near the swampy area, a rock came flying from the brush and hit my windshield, knocking a large, round chip out of it. Down the road, a long piece of branch hit the pickup and landed in the bed. I sped up and got out of there. The rock that hit the windshield had dropped down into the opening between the windshield and under the rear edge of the hood. It was larger than a softball, and the branch measured 8 feet long and 4 inches thick along its length. It was too large and heavy to have been easily thrown by a human. After reflecting on this encounter, these must have been more than one, based on the distance between where the rock was thrown and where the branch was thrown. I went back up there a couple of weeks later to check on the fresh grave to be sure that it had not been dug up by a wild predator. I planted some native iris. The new grave was untouched, but on top of the 3 little graves I found some large flat river rocks that had been placed atop. The nearest source of those types of rocks are 15 miles away. As I was leaving on this trip, another rock was thrown at my pickup. It was as I drove away, and this one landed in the bed doing no damage. The rock was close to the same type and size as those being used on the newer logging roads in the area. In the summer of 2019, it was a dry year, and many of the springs had dried up. The pond was probably the only source of water nearby, and these creatures may have been trying to drive me away so they could access the water. I never saw the creatures I had encountered, but one thing is for sure: bears don't stomp, nor do they throw rocks or sticks. I've heard of creatures throwing rocks, and they lob them at an underhand, but the rocks that were thrown at me were thrown with a flat trajectory like a baseball. I didn't take time to search for tracks or any other evidence what had been trying to intimidate me. I felt that I was not welcome in that area, At least while I was there. All right, everyone. Some terrifying encounters that will absolutely leave you thinking, Because, I mean, honestly, even narrating them and afterward, looking back, reflecting on them, there are some times that I'm just stunned. And it may be even the smallest, shortest encounter, uh, 20, 30 lines of, straight encounter, but I'm just like, what happened? Um, and these are a couple of those, I must say. And that video clip is really amazing. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed tonight's upload as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you all. And with that, please, everyone, stay safe. May the Great Spirit watch over us. And may He guide us down that path that we call life.